Hey there, everyone. Thank you so much for coming into the channel. It is officially that time for WWE NXT Halloween Havoc. We are going to be chatting about everything that went down here on the show. Now, before we get started, I have a very, very special guest. I'm so happy that he said yes to doing the show with me, and I cannot wait to bring him on. You saw him just a little bit ago on the NXT pre-show, but here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sam Roberts. What's up, Sam?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm sorry I'm not in my Stone Cold outfit anymore. I hope I didn't disappoint you, but thank you for having me and thank you for waiting for a couple minutes for me.
No, seriously, it was definitely well worth the wait. Although I got to tell you, I am a little disappointed that we're not getting the Stone Cold look, man. You were rocking it today.
Yeah, once the adrenaline kind of wore out and the show was over, I realized how uncomfortable those knee braces were, which you couldn't even see on camera. But I did have two knee braces and black boots on under my jorts.
That just
So
shows how devoted you were that you actually did the knee braces, even though they weren't going to come out on camera.
no, it was essential. There was no way I was doing it without two knee braces, but you can get on Amazon. I didn't know that.
Exactly. Oh my God, that's so awesome. All right. So before we get into everything, just a heads up to everybody here watching live right now. If you do want to go ahead and support this show, you are more welcome than just to not just subscribe to the channel because we just hit 70,000 subscribers, but also send in a super chat like my good friend here, Steven, who actually got us started with our first super chat of the night saying, let's get this party started. Hell yeah. So, Sam, the pre-show, excuse me. That was a lot of fun. You were there with your Stone Cold outfit. You were there with Dave LaGreca. You were there with Mackenzie Mitchell. Tell us a little bit about what your day has been like, especially given that not only did you get to watch the show, but you were also doing the pre-show, and then here you are now doing the post-show.
I mean, it's so much fun. It's the most fun thing in the world to get to do these pre-shows, especially with NXT now, just because I've gotten to see how the building has developed and the fan base has developed. I was doing pre-shows pretty early on, when we were still pandemic-y, and I may have done one when there was nobody there, and I definitely did a bunch sprinkling people in and and then the launch of 2.0 and bringing it back. And I've just noticed maybe the last three specifically, I've really felt this like major uptick in kind of a fan community that are going to the arena. That there's nothing, it feels alive, it feels excited, like the people are really in to everything that's happening. And that made me super happy because I know how hard everybody at NXT works to maintain that vibe in circumstances that are not always ideal. So I mean, and it's also, it's like, as a fan, kind of such like a privilege to be able to watch these premium live events live in that building. Because unless, you live in Orlando, it's the only place they are. Nobody's going to see those shows. I'm sure you would have loved to have go see Halloween Havoc live or whatever. If it were in an arena, a lot of people would be there. But the fact that, I got to see tonight's show and so many other shows live in the building is such a cool experience that's not lost on me.
Yeah, it definitely feels intimate too, because like you said, you have this constant fans that are going to the shows, and it kind of feels like a family now at this point. It's like a special thing to get to go to the CWC and be able to actually watch the show. So it is pretty cool that, a lot of people are sort of used to that and you get to experience that as well. And that's always, really awesome to see. So before we get into every single match, I do want to ask you though, how did you feel about the night overall? Because a lot of people usually tune into these shows that maybe they don't watch NXT on a weekly basis. So to tune into the actual, the big pay-per-views, the big shows, for them, it's sometimes a big introduction into a lot of the people that they don't know just yet. So for you, how do you think the show represented in terms of the new viewers that were watching tonight?
Well, I think that's a great point. And I think that these NXT premium live events have become sort of like marking posts to what the progress of the brand is. I mean, the brand took such a sharp turn a little over a year ago, and brought in a new influx of talent that had very little television experience. And it was just like, okay, we're almost starting from scratch. We have we have Ciampa still here and Cameron Grimes and a couple of guys like that. But for the most part, in terms of building stars, we're only building stars. And you remember that first episode of 2.0, for a lot of fans, it was almost overwhelming. They're like, why is there's 19 debuts on this show? And it's because, yeah, we are redoing the whole roster. And I can't remember who it was, but I was remarking to somebody today that what's really cool is that, like, you look at a show like today's and you can see the insane amount of progress men and women have made in a really short amount of time. The fact that Bron Breakker is like holding his own, standing toe to toe, doing this great match with guys like Ilja Dragunov and JD McDonagh is like insane for the amount of time that Bron Breakker has been wrestling. Like it's so crazy. So yeah, I was really happy. I loved the energy going into the show, like with the kind of blitz that they did with the media and a lot of interviews and Sean being out there in the press way more than ever before, kind of explaining like how important NXT is and how they view NXT and where NXT fits in the new WWE landscape that we're observing. And I think that was really well represented tonight. That if you look at it, it's like, okay, we're inching towards this point where it's like, oh, are we getting back to this era where like these NXT shows are just dope match, and out?
Exactly. And that was one of the things too. Even if you're watching the show like each and every single week, there were a lot of matches today that, even just like, I know we're going to go through them all one by one, but legitimately there were some matches here where I thought, man, this person really came out and really showed out tonight. Like just off the top of my head, obviously that main event was really phenomenal. It definitely just like took the show, I think, to a whole other level. And you know that when you close out the show, what you close out the show with is very important because that's what's going to stay in the fans' memory. And with this main event, I thought it was really freaking great. But even just like seeing Julius Creed out there, Damon Kemp, and seeing them go out there, and these are guys that are still fairly new into NXT. Obviously, they've been doing their thing for a bit. More so, Damon Kemp a little bit newer than Julius, but regardless, still new. Even with the ladder match, which we're going to get right into right now, a lot of these guys that we're just seeing what they can really do, especially at this type of caliber for the the PLE. So with that being said, let's kick it off. Let's kick it off with the ladder match, because this is the match that when I asked people on social media, Sam, I said, what's your favorite match of the night? What's the match that you most loved? So many people were giving me the North American title championship match, and a lot of people were putting this one over. And you had just a bunch of young guys. You had Nathan Frazier, you had Oro Menza, Carmelo Hayes, Wes Lee, who ended up winning the entire thing, and Von Wagner. So I want to start off by saying that this match, with a lot of people putting it over, I'm glad that they are, because you just saw every guy really go in there and kind of have a different moment for themselves and just pull out all of these different high caliber spots. And I will say this, the person that I thought really stood out to me was Nathan Frazier. After his third match that he did with Axiom, I became like a big time fan of Nathan Frazier after that match. But then him going into this match, I really noticed that he was just like going just from spot to spot in the ring. It was absolutely insane. So with that being said, Sam, how did you feel about this match? How did you feel about the guys and, everything that they did in this opener to really make it as hot as it was and so many people liking it?
I thought it was great. It's one of those where it's like, you have a bunch of different guys in that match, that it's a good news, bad situation. The good news is you've got this insane opportunity, right? Like, we're putting you on Halloween Havoc, which is, I would say, probably the second biggest NXT show of the year at this point, in this ladder match, which is something, the multi-man ladder match is something that NXT has become kind of known for. And it's like, boom, and it's a title match, and a lot of eyes are going to be on it. Here's the bad news. It's totally sink or swim. Like the expectations are all the way up here. So if you can deliver on those expectations, boom, you've got people talking about you immediately. but you've got to deliver on the expectations. And I thought that was the case for like a guy like Nathan Fraser, right? It's like we've been watching this build with the matches with Axiom, and it's like, man, he's special. Like, man, this is cool. But what's he going to do in the ladder match, right? The ladder match is where it's like, okay, prove it. And he proves it. And you're like, oh, man, that's awesome. Or like even Wesley, right, who's been around the block. The story of him and him existing without a tag partner, right? And this idea that, like, he now has to stand out as a singles star through no choice of his own, through no choice of the audience. Just the storyline is the very real life of this is just where we're at. This is just how the cards were played, and now can you do it? And I think the story that he took us all on through that match, like the insane stuff that he was doing in there, and then listening to the fact that the audience was behind him when he won. The audience was happy when he won. I was like, yes, that's what it's all about. I felt really good for.
And that's the thing too, is that Wesley has, he's always been popular, obviously with MSK, they were hot. They were, a great tag team. They were doing their thing. And, what happened with that. And afterwards, Wesley was kind of, watching every week, I kind of felt like we were seeing different shades of Wesley. It felt like he was kind of floating, trying to find his groove on the roster. And I remember like people like really rooting for him and wanting to see him succeed. He cut that very emotional promo that he did not too long ago, where he was talking about, everything that's happened for him. And so for him to actually win this match, I kind of thought like, this is exactly what he needed. Like this finally feels like there is more of a purpose now for Wesley. And I truly felt like any guy could have really had it here, because Carmelo Hayes was a really great NXT North American champion. I thought he was phenomenal, but at the same time, I had a feeling he wasn't going to be the one winning tonight, just because it's kind of like, okay, we've already been there, done that, seen that with Carmelo Hayes. So I was expecting somebody different to win. And my like prediction heading into this was it's either going to be Wesley or it's going to be Nathan Fraser. And I was cool with either one of those. So when Wesley got his moment, I thought it was just like, finally, I feel like there is going to be something new on his horizon for us to see in regards for Wesley on the roster. And there were just some really awesome spots that they did throughout the entire night. I think this was definitely a win and kind of just showed a little bit of what you can expect for like the future of the guys on NXT.
Yeah, and also like, with MSK and the Rascals before that, it was like how much, because you saw the celebrations on Twitter, right? You saw Zach Wentz is tweeting about like, yo, that's my best friend. And like Trey Miguel is like sending out tweets where I think he's in Las Vegas, like watching Halloween Havoc on his phone. And it's like, this isn't a wrestling thing. This isn't like a gimmick. This isn't like a promoter put a couple of guys together. Like this is like brother stuff. Like this is real life. Like these guys love each other like in a real way. And I mean, I don't know, like
it's
if
nice
I'm
to see,
smiling, right, and if I'm right, I'm like a cold-hearted bad person. So like if I'm
You're
smiling,
stone cold.
how can you not though? How can you
Yes.
not smile?
That's really great, man. I can't wait to see what goes down with Wesley as champion. But let's go ahead and move on from here. Let's get into the second match of the night. So this was the spin the wheel, make the deal match. So we didn't know what the stipulation was going to be for Apollo Crews and Grayson Waller. And it ended up being a casket match. Now, before we get into the actual, everything that kind of went down with the actual match, I want to ask you, because we know that NXT is a developmental brand that, you're supposed to be seeing people go from NXT to Raw and SmackDown. And aside from Mandy Rose, one of the people that we've seen go from, the main roster to NXT is Apollo Crews. And I spoke to Apollo Crews and he told me that he was so happy given where he was on the main roster, that he was just, he felt like a little bit, like he wasn't doing much on the main roster. And he felt like he finally got an opportunity to show who he is a little bit more in this recent feud that he's been doing with Grayson Waller. With that being said, Sam, what have you felt about Apollo Crews over on NXT and everything that he's been doing with Grayson Waller.
I'm happy for Apollo Crews. It's weird, right? It's like it's weird. And I actually had a conversation with Apollo Crews about it today. Like the sort of like dark side of Apollo that we're seeing, right? And that sort of mysticism and almost like there's an evil to Apollo that I think is good for Apollo. One, because it's so different. He hasn't done anything like this before. And two, because it's not something we would expect. Like we can't I didn't see that coming. We've seen Apollo really just be a guy who smiles and has great matches. We've seen Apollo adopt his Nigerian and turn it into his entity. But like this idea that like Grayson Waller thumbed him in the eye and it just like something in his brain just twitched. And all of a sudden, like there's this sort of kind of dark, brooding side to Apollo, which is great because somebody that's as big as Apollo Crews, that's as athletic as Apollo Crews. The question is like, what happens when this guy really stops smiling? And I feel like that's the Apollo Crews we're getting in NXT right now. And I think that's cool because it's different for us and it's different for him.
It certainly is different for him. And I even told him, like, I didn't even know that you could, like, do this stuff. When he was going head to head against Grayson Waller and they were throwing shots at one another, and Grayson Waller was like, you couldn't cut it on the main roster, and now you're on NXT and this and that. And then Apollo Crews was, like, firing back at him. I really liked that exchange. And I told him, like, I didn't even know that you could do that. He's like, I didn't even know that I could do that either. So it is kind of cool to, be able to see this different side of Apollo Crews and even Grayson Waller, because Grayson Waller is an interesting guy. I feel that he is, he's already got the mic stuff down, man. He is so good at getting the people to just get like super pissed off and fired up, when he's there. And then he did this whole thing with AJ Styles that I just think kind of gave him a little bit of that, he got a little bit of that rub from AJ Styles, which was definitely good. So even seeing him incorporated into the feud with Apollo Crews, I just feel like it was something that I started to look forward to on NXT every week. So they're doing this casket match, and for the most part, I thought, man, the thing I think I wanted to see more from this match was just maybe a little bit more of the violence in terms of their feud leading up to this. I mean, you got the bloody eye, you got one guy trying to make the other guy go, lose his vision, whatever it is that, they were doing there. So I did think this match could have just been a tad bit more violent, but I did like everything that they did here. I loved them basically, having the spot where Grayson Waller puts Apollo Crews through the coffin, breaks the coffin, but they don't count that whatsoever. So it kind of had you going, wait, what now? So should it count? Should it not count? And might even have some people torn on that. And so I did think that was interesting. Apollo Crews getting the win, I thought was definitely the right way to go about it. I loved the way that he chokeslammed Grayson right into that coffin, into the casket. So it was a lot of fun, but I did think we needed a little bit more violence for the story that they had been telling. How did you feel about this casket match?
Yeah, and what my favorite part was when he went through the coffin and Booker T's going, "It's over. Yeah, come on, man, it's over. He's in the coffin. It's over." And Vic's like, "No, he didn't get to shut the lid." Yeah, I totally see what you're saying about the violence. It's almost one of those things where you go, okay, if we do that, does it take away from the violence in the Julius Damon Kemp match, right? You go like, how do we tell a story that's that same sort of blood feud without stepping on toes of another one? And that's where I think they're like, what if we had druids? And the druids come out and like really throw a monkey wrench in the whole thing. Yeah, I hope, to your point, I hope that we're only seeing the beginning of this sort of more potentially violent side of Apollo Crews, because I'd like to see, I think, the same thing that you want to see. Like and maybe it's for whatever's next for Apollo, or who knows. But I'd love to see what happens when like Apollo Crews like really takes the gloves off, and it's not about wrestling anymore. It's about, no, this dude over here that could hurt you, he's really ready to hurt you now. I'd love to see
it does feel like they can still, continue this more so with Apollo Crews and Grayson Waller. Like I feel like this story could even continue even further. And I know obviously with Apollo Crews getting the win now, it's like, okay, well maybe you can wrap that up and continue on from there, but they could take it to a whole other level. Again, I feel like this just ties back to what they've been doing even prior to this match. And I will say this too, I want to shout out Apollo Crews, man, because there were some moments that he had in here where I was like, oh, he did that so good. Like the frog splash that he did, I really like that. It's just the fall away slam was really good too. I mean, there was just a lot of high impact moments that I did really enjoy from this match a whole lot.
It'd be cool to see Apollo really tear some people up and then get to a place where he's next in line for the NXT championship. Because I feel like Bron Breakker a lot of times has these matches with incredible wrestlers, right? Like tonight, or like he's done, or Tyler Bate, or you could name a million of them, right? Even Dolph Ziggler. But I feel like you could very easily get Apollo Crews to the point where it's like, oh, I think he's just as powerful and just as strong as Bron Breakker. So we know what Bron Breakker does when he's matched up with somebody who's maybe not as big as he is, but is an incredible wrestler. What does Bron Breakker do when he's matched with an equal? How does he cope with that? And I'd love to see that kind of play out with Apollo.
I think Apollo Crews would definitely be a really great next challenger to Bron Breakker. And I'm glad that you brought it up because you're right on that sense. I do think that they can have a really fun match, especially given off of him coming off the story with Grayson Waller. I do think that would be the next step for Apollo Crews is to go in and, be one of Bron Breakker's next challenger. So that's definitely something there. We got a super chat here from Infamous Raider Loco who says, great Halloween Havoc. I legit thought Undertaker was coming out with Crews and during the Crews and Waller match. Imagine that we would have seen the Undertaker. Thank you to Infamous Raider Loco.
I feel like if you've got the Undertaker on a takeover, it would be like putting Stone Cold on the pre-show. You can probably do more, maybe advertise that he's going to be there.
Although he's right. And he said he was trying to mean pop, by the way. Of course, the Undertaker would get a freaking massive pop. That'd be hilarious. That'd be awesome, actually. Can you imagine if that would have happened tonight? Everybody would have been like, what's going on right now?
It's also how would Grayson Waller or Apollo Crews, God bless him, how would they ever get the audience back when the audience was just no, we want to look at the Undertaker?
Done.
Yeah.
I think everything afterwards would be done. That's it. Let's just talk about the Undertaker.
What's he doing? What's Taker doing?
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, guys. So let's get into our next match here. And Sam, I cannot wait to talk about this one legit because these are two competitors that I have just been obsessed with. I think that their story together, the story that they've been telling each and every single week has probably been one of my favorite things that we've been seeing from this new era of NXT, and that is Roxanne Perez and Cora Jade. I've been loving that Roxanne Perez came in hot. She came in with so much online popularity, and that kept going. She won the breakout tournament right away. She held tag team gold. She went for the women's championship. It didn't happen for her, but she was still, going for it. And then she gets into this story with Cora Jade, and I feel like Cora Jade, she started things the way that we first started seeing her on NXT. She was this cute, fun, young girl who, oh my God, she's going to have so much potential and she's having great moments. But now she's leveled it up where we're seeing Cora Jade, this real mean girl. And we're hearing the things that she's saying on her promos, seeing what she did to her former best friend, Roxanne Perez. And I've really enjoyed seeing that growth from Cora Jade. I love this version of Cora. I think her and Roxanne really just told a phenomenal story together. With that being said, we're obviously got to talk about this Weapons Wild match because they went out there and they literally utilized every single weapon that they had out there. I loved that Roxanne started things off with the skateboard because that clearly ties into the attack that Cora Jade first did, when this whole thing first happened. But I loved that Cora Jade was just throwing weapons and trying to like get her to bring down that skateboard, and it wasn't happening. It was almost like rock, paper, scissors, and the skateboard was the strongest and it was winning. And then from, they continued on. There was a moment where I thought this one was brutal because Cora started choking Roxanne Perez with this like a rope, but instead of having it around her neck, she had it in her mouth, and Roxanne's mouth was like a little bit open. So I'm imagining this rope going in between, your gums and your lips, and that's such a sensitive area in your teeth. So I'm like, oh, this is not going to be fun tomorrow for Roxanne Perez. So I kind of liked, that whole visual of that. At one point, we see Cora Jade run off. They go into that platform where you guys do the show, and they're up there, and we end up seeing them both go down through the table that was underneath that platform. I thought that was just like a crazy spot to do, but at the same time, it was one of those things that I think this match, it had to have, right? It had to have this moment because this is what they had been working towards with the story that they've been telling. They're not happy with each other, and this is how ugly things got and where it culminated to. So I got to tell you, this was fun. The ending with the pop rocks and Roxanne getting the win and doing the pop rocks on the actual chairs. Loved the finish. Loved everything that they did here. I thought this was definitely probably, I would say, my third favorite match of the night, maybe third, fourth, because there was a lot of matches that I really liked. So with that being said, Sam, how did you feel about this whole story with Roxanne and Cora, and then how it all played out here tonight?
Yeah, it's some of that long-term booking that everybody's asking for, right? It was really cool. On the kickoff show, we aired the clip of kind of when it first started, and they put the date under it, and it was like July 12th or July something or whatever. And I was like, man, how cool is that? That like something they started in July is getting paid off in October. Like, and it's still just as, if not more hot than it was when they first started it, in my opinion. I really enjoyed it. I thought that you're right about the first of all, if I had known that those rails were that easily removable up on the crow's nest, I would have been much more nervous.
You could have been back, and that could have been the end for you.
Yeah. I wouldn't have been able to come back and finish the match after that. That would have been it. I think I talk about this a lot on my podcast. Like whenever people bring up like, oh, should there be maybe a secondary women's championship, or do you think this title should be added to the women's division? I've, for a long time, said that the women's division doesn't need more titles. The women's division needs more stories. Like there needs to be women's matches on pay-per-views that are not based around a championship, that are based around a story. Like that's never been a problem for the men on the roster. Like grudge matches happen all the time, but it doesn't happen nearly enough on the women's side of things. It's always about who's going to be the champion, as opposed to, no, the whole audience wants to see this very personal issue settled. And that's what wrestling is. And so the fact that this wasn't a title match, this wasn't a contendership match, this wasn't an anything except this very personal rivalry needs to be settled. And men, women, and children who watch NXT all want to see this very personal rivalry settled. And that makes me happy to see something like that. And then to see both of them rise to the occasion. It's always great that you're saying with the Cora Jade character taking the turn that she took. It's always interesting to me that like that when a character really starts to gain momentum and people are like talking about them, oh, she's going to be the future. She's going to be the future. She's going to be the future. Like what happens when that character starts to believe the hype, right? What happens when that character starts to go like, oh, instead of saying, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and plow along ahead, they go, you know what? You guys are right. I am the future. I don't need to deal with any of this. I like every now and then when that turn happens and it's like, you boo it because they're villainous, but also they're not wrong. They're like, I have this attitude because I'm so good. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're good, but we'll tell you, don't say it. We know, but don't say it. I'm with you on the start of the match. I like that when she took out the skateboard, it was almost like, okay, I've learned your tricks, right? Like I'm now, I can play your game and I can play your game better than you. And it was like, okay, here we go. Here we go. This isn't like Roxanne Perez is on board and let's go. And yeah, I was super happy with the match. And I thought it was great for the story. I thought it was awesome.
And let me ask you, and this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler for the, a match that we're going to talk about later on. But with that being said, I don't want to spoil it. Well, for those obviously pretty much already know the results, but Mandy Rose did retain her championship. So I kind of feel after Mandy retained, because I thought that we were going to be seeing a new NXT Women's Champion here tonight. But now that Mandy retained, and given how long she's held that championship for now, it's been, a very, very long time. My prediction is that Roxanne Perez is going to be the one to end this reign for Mandy Rose. I think she will become the NXT Women's Champion following Mandy Rose. Are you along those lines, or do you think that there's still a ways to go for Roxanne to actually become NXT Women's Champion?
No, I think it's very possible. When you look at the story, it's like, the story that was told tonight was, okay, this rivalry between Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez started when Cora Jade cost Roxanne the women's championship. When you say Cora Jade cost Roxanne Perez the women's championship, that infers that had Cora Jade not interfered, Roxanne Perez would have beaten Mandy Rose, right? That's what is being said. So it's like, okay, once that's out of the way, the natural question is, can Roxanne Perez still beat Mandy Rose? Because you told me she could beat her before. Like, and that's where and that's where I'd like to see it. Yeah. I mean, yeah, and it's also, in my head, I still see for Cora Jade as being that person who is going to be the next NXT Women's Champion. But I don't know. Like, do you go from villain to villain? Probably not. Like would Cora Jade beating Mandy Rose feel like too much of the same to make that, like, why, if it's going to be more of the same, don't make the transition. It's going to be a big deal when Mandy Rose loses the title. So, yeah, I mean, I love the idea of Roxanne Perez winning the title and then having to defend it against members of all rosters, having more, as many main roster stars are coming to NXT as of late. Having Rhea Ripley come back to NXT and challenge Roxanne Perez, and having, Bayley come back to NXT and challenge Roxanne Perez. I think that's how you build her into this person that's like, this little engine that's has had more serious challenges than just about anybody. I think could be a really cool juxtaposition to what we've had for the last year or so with the NXT Women's Championship.
It would definitely be something different, something a lot. I think it would be like more just add to it. And like you mentioned, because Mandy Rose's reign has been so long, whoever defeats her, it's going to be a big deal. They've crossed they've crossed on over now where it's not like, oh yay, she's the new champion. Woo. It's like, oh man, she was the chosen one to end Mandy Rose's, X amount of day reign that she's now on. I think the last time I checked, it was like 357, and that was like a couple days ago. So now she's like at 360. I don't even know how many days anymore, but she's way past that, that mark at this point. So it is kind of crazy to see that she's still champion. And then on top of that, whoever actually defeats her is going to be ending this massive long reign. We got a super chat here from Steven who says that this was his match of the night. And I really think that a huge part of that was legitimately the story that Cora and Roxanne have been, telling each and every single week on NXT. It really gets you going. We got Infamous Raider Loco sends in a super chat saying this match was great. The weapons, insane spots. But yes, Pop Rocks on chair had to be the ending. Do you think she's ready for the main roster? Do you think that's still too early to say, Sam?
Well, I mean, Roxanne Perez you're talking about, or Cora Jade?
For Roxanne Perez.
Yeah, I think Roxanne Perez would be good on the main roster, but I think there's plenty of work for her to still do in NXT. I think that as much kind of momentum and buzz as she has now, there's still room for that to grow. And she's so young. It's like, why not get the most out of her NXT run and then go and get the most out of a SmackDown run, and then go and get the most out of a Raw run. It's just like there's no reason to rush this thing. You could build something really, really cool. And also, by the way, I do want to say, while you're reading super chats, just so everybody knows, like, Denise is a very like cordial, polite, good host. She would never ask me any questions that were like untoward or rude. However, she does have to read super chats. So if there are questions that you're like, oh, I wish Denise would ask this, but she would never ask because she's too nice, you should super chat them in, and then she would have to ask me them.
I love it, Sam. It will just keep making me more. It will just make more money. So I'm here for that.
Look, we're doing business here. Okay,
I'm going to be like, well, I didn't ask this question. This person asked this question.
That's it. And then I can't get mad. I'm like, Denise, why would you put me in that position? You're like, I didn't. I got a super chat. What am I going to? I got to read a super chat.
The people pay their money. People pay their hard-earned money.
Yes. And take advantage. People watching should take full advantage of the super chat.
I love it. Infamous Raider Loco, thank you so much for sending this in, BTW. And like Sam said, please do send in the super chats and we'll pull them up here for sure. But going back to the point that you just made, there's no rush. I know we get excited about seeing people get called up, but I feel like with Roxanne, and speaking specifically about Roxanne and Cora, it's too early, not in the sense that like, oh, if they didn't go, it would like they would be bad or something. No, it's just that they still have a lot that they can do, you know?
And it's like, wouldn't you like imagine how cool it would be? Like, let's say, and who knows? I have no idea. I know the next NXT Premium Live event is deadline on what they say, December 10th, whatever they announced on the show tonight. Other than that, I have no idea. But let's say they do what they did last year at WrestleMania and they end up back in an arena for a show, right? Whenever they get back to an arena, because Sean has said publicly that that's what he wants to do. How special would it be if the next time they're in an arena, that's when someone like Roxanne Perez gets to win that NXT Women's Championship? Like, that's a moment that you wouldn't get if you called her up now. Like, you almost want to go like, okay, if there are still more moments to have, why waste them? Like, we'll get there with Roxanne. We'll get there.
Yeah, there's still definitely lots more moments to have. That's for sure. That's totally it right there. Okay, this next match, Sam, I got to tell you. So, looking at the card, there were certain matches I was like, yes, this is the one I'm most excited for. Yes, that's the one I can't wait for. But this one, I'm not going to lie to you, it flew a little bit under my radar. And now I'm like punching myself in the face because this ended up being one of my favorite matches of the night. For me, it was like the main event. This match here were at the very, very top. And this one was the ambulance match between Damon Kemp and Julius Creed. And with Julius losing, if he were to lose, Brutus would be gone from NXT. So I thought, oh my God, it's definitely going to be Damon Kemp. He's definitely going to win this match, whatever, right? That was the prediction going in. I loved this match. And the reason I loved this match so much was because it felt like a fight. They were literally pulling out each and every single weapon that they could possibly find. And just at one point, like throwing at each other, where it wasn't even this thing where it was like throw it and like the person catches it or it hits them perfectly. No, it wasn't anything like that. It was more so of like, I'm so desperate to win this match and get this guy hurt, to get him into this ambulance match so we can end it and call it a day, that I'm just going to start throwing stuff and hope that something lands. And that to me kind of feels a little bit more like if I'm in a fight, I just think to myself, Sam, if I was in a fight, if you and I were in a fight right now and we were like, we need a win, I would just be throwing things without like a second to even waste, because you're just like, I gotta get this win. And there was no downtime. It was just go, 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 go. And to me, that just felt a little bit more in line with what would happen if you were in a legitimate, fight. If I was in a legitimate fight like this, right? So I loved that they did this. I love that they had, every single moment that they possibly could. Whenever you thought somebody was finally going to get locked into that ambulance, whether it was a crutch that got in the way or just a quick hand that got in the way, I thought that's really what made this match feel really special. And this was a win for me. Like, they had a lot of really good stuff, like Julius doing that power bomb to Damon Kemp onto the stretcher when he put him through the little table that was in the hallway, throwing the ring bell at one point. I mean, it was just a lot of different stuff that they did here that I think it got very violent and just very enjoyable to watch. So even though on paper this wasn't the match that I was like clamoring for, it ended up being like the match that I really, really enjoyed the most, or one of rather.
And I think that the reason for that is, and I don't know if people really fully grasp it yet for whatever reason, but like Julius Creed is a future world champion. Like, Julius Creed is the one. Like, really look at what Julius Creed does. Go back and look at those Creed brothers matches and really study Julius Creed. If there was somebody to invest in now, if you could invest in superstars like they were stocks and you want to play the long game, Julius Creed is the one to play the long game on. He is so incredible. And you're right about it feeling like a real fight. You know, one of the funnest things to see from my perspective, which I'm very fortunate to have, is every now and then I'm in a spot where I can see that a match turns people backstage into wrestling fans. Like, watching people who are wrestlers themselves or who are working or who are in this day in, day out, like watching that switch happen, watching them turn into wrestling fans is like one of the things that I just love, because at our core, that's what we all are, right? And this was one of those matches. Like, I was there, right backstage in the performance center. Everybody was glued to all the TVs and just like, oh yeah, oh, it was like, and it was so cool to see how into it everybody was that is working there, that is wrestling there, that might have already had matches earlier in the night, that might have matches coming up later in the night. It was so it was so cool. I mean, that one when he started just slamming Damon Kemp with that steel chair over and over and over again, it's like, dude, if you don't believe this story that they're telling you, I don't know what you'll believe. Like, this is a guy who is fighting for his brother's career, and I believed it, and I'm on board, and yeah, I thought it was very well done.
The wheelchair spot too, that was something that I feel I had to mention because that was very creative.
Yeah. Not only that, but like when he fell back in the wheelchair.
Oh, like, yeah, that was funny too, because you're like, oh, that hurts. Like, you can visualize that. You can visualize like going through that pain.
Yeah, because you're terrified of it, right? When you're sitting, like, we've all like leaned back too far in a chair, and we're like, oh my God, can you imagine? And he just and it happened to him, and then he got pummeled after it. Yeah. No, I thought it was it was very it's cool when you see stuff like that where they look around at what they have and think, what can we do with this that's new? Like, what can we do with this that's cool? And I feel like that happened there.
I completely agreed. I'm so glad that we're not going to see Brutus gone from NXT, because I was starting to wonder, is this going to be the end of the Creed brothers? I hope not, because like we were talking earlier about Roxanne and Cora, Jade, and still wanting to have these moments. That's where I'm at with the Creed brothers. Like, the Creed brothers are legitimately one of my favorite teams to see on NXT, and I can't wait to see what their growth is going to look like. I've already visualized these guys like on the main roster, and you know, all of these different matches that they could be having as a team. And to me, that's like very exciting, because you know, tag team wrestling is so fun to see, and the Creed brothers, I feel, are going to be like top-notch favorites someday. But with that being said, that doesn't mean that you can't see, you know, Julius, like you mentioned, as a world champion, because that's bound to happen. And we do have another super chat here from infamous Raider Loco, who says, he said it, future champ. Didn't want to think it because the Creed's tag team is awesome, but yes, future champion. You can I feel like you can have both things. Like, you can be in this awesome tag team, and you can also be this awesome, you know, singles guy, and, you know, end up becoming a world champion. So that it will be exciting to see for Julius Creed. Now we have 2 more matches to get into, everybody. But before we get into the last 2 matches, I do want to let you guys all know that if you haven't already, if you're here, if this is your first time on the channel, please make sure to click that subscribe button. I just surpassed 70,000 subscribers on this YouTube channel. I can't even believe it. It's been a long time coming. So I'm very, very happy about that. So please make sure you click that subscribe button. But now let's go ahead and get into the women's match. This is for the NXT Women's Championship, and we had Mandy Rose and Alba Fyre. Now, this match kind of started a little bit differently, a little bit rather unexpected, because part of it kind of started early on in the night. It wasn't supposed to, but it kind of did, because you ended up seeing Toxic Attraction going to try and find Alba Fyre. They end up in this like haunted mansion that reminds you of, when you go to like Halloween Haunt and you go through the mazes and all of that stuff, and they're being, spooked to death by all the things that they're seeing there. But Alba Fyre ends up, attacking all of them. And the last one she attacks is Mandy Rose. And then she ends up sort of kidnapping Mandy Rose, taking her in her vehicle and then driving away with her until they finally end up at the CWC. So they're there. They finally get this match started because Alba Fyre basically drags her out there, and that's how this match ends up going. This one for me, I was legitimately, I mentioned this earlier, but I was legitimately thinking we were going to see a brand new NXT Women's Champion. And even with the way that the match started and the way that the match was kind of going, I thought, oh, it's for sure going to be Alba Fyre. So I was definitely a little surprised when it wasn't. But like I said, that kind of made me think maybe it's going to be Roxanne who dethrones Mandy Rose. But either way, there was a lot that I did end up liking in this match. More so, I did love like all the interaction stuff that they did with Toxic Attraction getting involved and basically ruining the opportunity for Alba Fyre, because when she hit that swanton, you thought, oh my God, this is it. This is going to be over. Alba Fyre is going to get, is going to get the win. But then we end up seeing the referee get taken out by accident. He's, done and out for a second. And you see Alba Fyre is clearly going to get this win because she hits a headbutt to Mandy Rose, and then she hits her with the gory bomb, but there's no referee there to count the win. So that doesn't end up happening. And of course, like all happens, referee finally comes back once Mandy is, getting all the help because she had Toxic Attraction on the outside helping her out to attack Alba Fyre. And so Mandy Rose retains the NXT Women's Championship. What did you think of this match, and how did you feel about how things played out with Toxic Attraction?
I thought it's so weird. Like, it almost felt like a throwback to theatrical matches. And then it made me think about the pandemic and just how things were really weird, man. And that's what I was like, man, remember when there would be like theatrical matches and we'd be like, oh, this is so much better because it's not just wrestling in a weird empty building. And like, then it was like it feels like a lifetime ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. And it just got me to think how like, I don't know, it just was what a weird time that was.
It was fun to see the cinematic matches because I mean, obviously Undertaker, AJ Styles was so much fun. Then you had the Firefly Funhouse, but at the same time, like it does take you back to this period in time where you're like, man, life all around was kind of a mess. It was all around.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'll tell you, I was like, this is interesting. There's an interesting choice that's going on. Like, I don't know where I land on it, right? As I was watching it play out, they're going through the haunted house and everything. But I'll tell you what I liked about it was, I mean, like, Alba Fyre, like, really came across as ferociously violent in this thing. When she was, like, just slamming the heads down on the table. And even, like, when they were in the car and she just slammed Mandy Rose by the face, I was like, I thought that's where it really added. That's where, like you said, like, let's say you haven't been watching this story build up. You don't watch NXT, but you got Peacock. So you turned on, Halloween Havoc because I'll watch this NXT show on a Saturday night. And now throughout the night, we've built up like, yo, Alba Fyre doesn't mess around. Like Alba Fyre is serious. And I felt like by the time they got to the ring, that point had been made where it was like, oh my God, she is capable of doing damage. So I thought that was good. And the fact that, you know, there was so much chicanery with the referee and everything and toxic attraction, that did lead me to believe that, who knows, like maybe this story isn't done. It doesn't feel like declarative.
No, she's got to get some revenge, man. Because it's like Mandy had all this help with toxic attraction. I feel like Alba Fyre has to get her revenge.
How great would it be if they did a women's cage match between
sweet.
Mandy Rose and Alba Fyre at like a pay-per-view, at a premium live event, not like like at Deadline or whatever. Like if they did a cage match for the NXT Women's Championship between these two, like I feel like just how high those stakes would be. That would be an awesome thing. And then I mean, now we're fantasy booking, but it's like
that's like what always happens, right? Like,
of course, how do you not?
It's like mandatory. It's like part of it. You're like, well, what if this happens? And the next thing you know, you're too far down. But
yeah, but if you did that right, and Mandy Rose was able to win the cage match, and then she's like, you know, nobody can beat me, blah blah blah, and then that would get you to next year, and you know,
oh my gosh, next year's already coming. I was thinking, oh wait, he already got to next year. Oh shit, the pay-per-view's in December. He's right, next year.
Right. So then you're like, okay, maybe we can. Now it's January, so we can push Roxanne Perez to maybe that WrestleMania weekend.
Wow. And by obviously they would be in a different location. I'm assuming. I don't know.
I would love
different location for the actual show
in Los Angeles. Oh my God, that'd be perfect.
Yes, please. That's my city. I'm so excited about WrestleMania being in Los Angeles because Sam, here's the thing. I'm so tired of flying places. I'm so done. I'm done. I don't have to fly anywhere.
Here's the issue that, like, if they did it in Los Angeles, they did a matinee last year. But Los Angeles is 3 hours ahead, so it'd be like 7 o'clock in the morning. We'd have to go to NXT,
unless like they push it like later on, you know, like later on in the day. But yeah, because
or late night. They could do it late night because like they could do it at like 9 o'clock your time, which would be midnight on the East Coast. That'd be badass.
That would be crazy. But I mean, I feel like you're right. If they were to do it too early, it would be like breakfast for some people.
It was tough. Yeah.
We got and this is the match that got people talking, by the way. We got a super chat here from Kaon Jared who says, I'm tired of Mandy as champ. No cap. Feeling passionate here. Sheldon Jackson says that match to me felt like it should have been Alba's night, but made her look dumb with the numbers game in the end. So all that stuff was for nothing. A lot of people kind of feeling a little fired up with this one here.
Alba fired up.
Yeah, there you go. Fired up for Alba Fyre. Dante NYC says, question for both of you guys. Do you guys think that they're making Mandy look like a weak champion because 99% of her wins are through toxic attractions interference? It's like Britt Baker matches. Thoughts on this? Do you think that they've been making Mandy Rose look weak because she has friends?
No, I mean, that's what people say about Roman. And it's like Roman is the most dominant force in wrestling. Like, you know, the bloodline interferes. Yeah, the bloodline interferes, but then sometimes they don't. Like it is what it is. It's a villain.
It's a power move.
That's it. It's a villainous champion. Like whether you have people watching your back or not, it's like if you've been champion for a year and your challengers still don't know, oh, I got to watch my back because sometimes toxic attraction interferes. Dude, that's on them. It's not it's like we know the pattern. If you can't figure out the pattern and figure out a way to win anyway, that's on you.
Maybe she should have had some backup. Like, hey, man, if toxic attraction gets involved, maybe I'll have some backup. That's why she comes out with her bat, too. There you go. I mean, probably she couldn't have used it, or maybe she could have, but it's like, you know. But either way, thank you so much to Dante NYC. I love how a lot of people are really fired up about this one here. I think a lot of people are surprised.
Hey, man. People are really mad that the bad guy beat the good guy. I like that. That's the way it's supposed to be. And hopefully this means that people will be like, I really want to see a rematch. And if we're lucky, it'll be in a cage. I want it in a cage.
Bring the cage. You got to manifest it.
Yeah.
Infamous Raider Loco says, when do you think Mandy loses his title and who does it? And I think you kind of just spoke about that, with it possibly being WrestleMania weekend when they do their PLE for NXT for that. So I think that's kind of where we're at in terms of predictions for that. All right. It's time. We got one more, Sam, and this is the main event. And I'm just going to say right off the bat, this was match of the freaking night. This was match of the freaking night. They stole this. I mean, I have like a paragraph of things that they did here, and I'm just going to like highlight a few of these moments because Jesus, it was so great. This was the NXT Championship match. This was Bron Breakker, Ilja Dragunov, Jade McDonagh, and here's the thing about these guys is that they all are so different, but they're also hard hitting, but in different ways. Their styles are a little bit different, and they all bring something unique to the ring and to the match. And we saw that really, really play out in this. I thought at the start, seeing Jade McDonagh be really dominant against Ilja Dragunov, I thought that was pretty great. We saw a coast to coast from Dragunov to both guys, not just one, but to both guys. So that was kind of a highlight of this match. We see a little bit of like some teamwork here between Dragunov and Breakker at one point. And I liked it because it was all because JD McDonagh was kind of like enjoying the fact that they had brought each other down, and he's there like clapping away, being a little bit of a jerk. So that obviously pisses them off. Really love that. There was a moment where Dragunov just went off and started chopping both guys simultaneously. It was like one here, one there, one here, one there. That was really great too. That was a really awesome moment. Bron Breakker doing the Frankensteiner while on JD, and then Ilja catching him and doing the power bomb spot. That was freaking awesome. I mean, it was kind of insane at this point. There was a moment where I thought this match was over, Sam. I thought it was over when Dragunov hit that fist to Bron Breakker. I thought that could have been the end of this match. And then when JD hit the 450, I thought, oh my God, this is the end of this match. So there were two times where I thought, this is it. The match is over. But then from there, it just kept going. It just kept getting better and better. Like the match kept just improving. So I really like this. There was a moment where Breakker did a double suplex spot on both the guys. That was also really impressive. The Dragon Senton and the Torpedo Moscow from Ilja Dragunov. I thought it was over then too. But eventually we end up seeing Bron Breakker get the win here. And that was pretty surprising to me because I thought that Ilja Dragunov had it in the bag. And maybe it was me because I really wanted to see Ilja Dragunov win. But I really thought that there were so many times near the end where I thought, this is it. Dragunov's actually going to win. How did you feel about this match? Who were you rooting for? And how did you feel about it overall?
I mean, I love a destructive force. I still love Bron Breakker just plowing through everybody. Like, I think it's great. But what I really think is great is, I mean, he's the best example. When I was talking earlier about progress and the way the brand and people within the brand have progressed, Bron Breakker debuted on TV less than 13 months ago and had not wrestled before. He didn't come from the Indies. He didn't come from, AEW or New Japan or Impact or anything. He's an athlete, came to the PC, trained, was on TV going, oh my God, like, how did this happen? And is now this like insane dominant world champion. It's the definition of building a star, right? And watching somebody like that rise to the occasion is so great, especially now that he's really being tested. And he's really being tested against like guys like he had tonight in that triple threat. Like, I think as fans, we haven't quite caught up with the fact that it is so cool that Ilja Dragunov is a WWE superstar. Like, that guy wrestling that style is a WWE superstar. That's crazy. It's awesome. It's so cool. The stuff that JD McDonagh has been doing character-wise, like, and the fact that he's changed his wrestling style so that it matches this sort of psycho character that he's doing, it might be my favorite thing on NXT, to tell you the truth. I adore what JD McDonagh is doing. I believe it. I feel like he believes it. That's what makes me believe it. You don't see him break. You don't see him wink. You don't see him blink. You're just like, this is JD McDonagh, and his style in the ring matches his character. He doesn't, start doing promos about how, ooh, I'm a psycho crazy man, and then just do the same matches that he's been doing for years anyway. And you're like, okay. It's like he truly has transformed into something else. I think that's what you were saying about having like people who you might think are like similar styles, but are actually completely different offensively. And then you got Bron Breakker, who it's like, in a previous era, Bron Breakker might have been a Goldberg type, spear jackhammer win. But now it's like, okay, dude, that's not what this audience is expecting. This audience, every now and then, a spear jackhammer hand in the air is good, right? Like, it's like cool, like, it's just a fun spectacle. But we want to know that the champion is going to be able to have banger matches. And that's the point that Bron Breakker has gotten to. And yeah, man, watching him hang with those two tonight and tell that story. And like you said, like the fact that there were 2 moments in that match specifically that you were like, as somebody who's been watching wrestling as long as you have and as much wrestling as you do, that you're still going, it's over here. This is it. Oh, it's not over. Like, that's like, oh, they got me. Like, that's why we watch,
I love that type of stuff. But I think when you kind of painted the picture of like, hey, Bron is, just really like he doesn't come from this background, he doesn't come from that background, he's an athlete, and here he is, holding his own ground against guys like JD and Ilja. It is something where you stop and think about it, you're going like, holy damn, that is pretty impressive. And that's kind of a big challenge within itself, because it could have easily been a situation where you're like, you know what, JD and Ilja were great, but damn, did Bron stink up that match. And that was definitely not the case whatsoever. Instead, it all flowed and just ebbed really well together. So that was really cool to see. I feel like this match was, I mentioned earlier people coming in and maybe seeing the new NXT product for the first time. I feel this match was the kind of match that you would want for those fans that still remember the old NXT, that this is what they want to see. And so it's stuff like this that I feel just kind of makes you go like, damn, there's some good stuff in there. So I really love this main event. I thought this one was really freaking great. But with that being said, I still want to see Bron Breakker versus Ilja Dragunov 1-on-1. So I hope that we don't just like forget about that or speed past that, because that to me feels like that's what's on the horizon.
Yeah, and I think that question is still there. Like, what happens when that match? We haven't seen that match. What does that match look like? I'm with you. I would love to see it. And yeah, I think you're right about this being an example of what the kind of latest incarnation of NXT is looking like, the kind of post NXT 2.0 world, right? This is kind of that third level where it's like, we're not giving up what we were doing in 2.0, but we're also going to bring back some of the stuff you loved in Black and Gold. Like, there's no reason we can't have the best of both worlds. And I think that's what this match was. This match was the best of both worlds. It's like, we can build those stars from scratch for the most part and incorporate the best wrestlers in the world. I mean, I think Sean said that in one of the interviews that he was doing, that there is no definition of this is who we're looking for and this is not who we're looking for. It's like, if there's a college athlete that is 20 years old and has got a resume like Bianca Belair, for example, then it's like, of course you want that person in your camp. But if the best professional wrestler in the world also becomes available, of course you want that person in your camp, And I think that's what you're seeing in NXT now, and that's certainly what you saw in the main event.
Yeah, I feel like that's how it's got to be too. I feel like if it's just, the one group of, just all athletes, right? And like not everyone can be a Braun breaker, right? Not everybody can go from athlete to, be like a full polished pro wrestler, right? Like not everybody can do that. It's, trial and error and whatnot. So I do feel like having that mixture of, even guys that already have this experience, bringing guys from the indies, etc. Or like you mentioned, guys that are, big stars that make a big name for themselves. I do feel like you have to have that balance. But that's just like my personal, taste and wanting to see that, because examples like this main event is stuff that you can get when you have kind of like you said this best of two worlds sort of deal. We got a super chat here from Reggie Simmons. Thank you so much for the nice word from Reggie, who says, keep killing it, Salcedo, you're an inspiration. Thank you so much, that really means a lot to me, seriously, a whole lot. And we got another super chat here from Dante NYC, who says, I agree with you guys about Mandy. I put respect on her name. How long before Bron's on the main roster? That's a big question, because I know a lot of people thought, okay, if Bron loses today, he's going to the main roster. And he didn't lose today, which tells us his story on NXT is going to go on a little bit longer. Were you surprised, or what's kind of like your thought process in terms of, is this guy going to the main roster soon, or is there still a lot more leg to do on NXT?
I think people have been asking, when does Braun Breaker go to the main roster, since like October, whatever it was, October 4th, maybe, of last year. Like literally the second he was on TV, it was like, when is that guy going to be on the main roster? And I think because of that, like that's a lot of anticipation that I think you have to, or would hopefully take advantage of. I wouldn't be surprised if Braun Breaker was in the Royal Rumble, for example. I would think it feels like there's more cooperation with NXT, Raw, and SmackDown than there has been in a very long time. So I would imagine that there'll be, I would like to see, I'll say, NXT representation in the Royal Rumbles this year. But honestly, if it was me, if it was my choice, I'm debuting Braun Breaker the night after WrestleMania. That's the timing. Braun Breaker's the one to do that with. Like, there are other people that you can scatter in, and that's cool that he's here. That's cool. But like, yeah, the night after WrestleMania, Monday Night Raw, maybe Bobby Lashley's in the ring, maybe somebody like that, and like Braun Breaker comes out, and it's like, here we go.
Beefy guys on beefy guys. There you go. Oh my God. And that's the thing too. Like, I feel like Braun Breaker would be that guy to do, the Raw After Mania debut, because that's the person that, would get a very loud reaction, would get this pop, would get this genuine reaction from the crowd. It's like, oh shit, he's finally here. Because like you said, it's been a very long time where people were like, when's he going to go to the main roster? It almost feels like every month you're like, okay, well, if he loses this month, he's going to the main roster. Okay, nope. If he loses next month, he's going to the main roster. So it is one of those things where you're like, okay, at some point it's bound to happen, right? I think it's one of those things where, just because of how, obviously his family legacy, the way he looks, the way he talks, the way he, goes out there, and this improvement that he's had in ring, you just can't help but to wonder, when is this guy going to go to the main roster? So thank you so much to Dante NYC for sending in this super chat. We got Kayon Jared, who says, W match of the night. Roman was like, all right, NXT. Thank you, Kayon. Infamous Raider Loco says, she finally takes the titles, or who finally takes the title off of Bron? See, I was going with Ilja Dragunov. So now that it's not, at least not right now, happening, Ilja Dragunov, I'm going to be honest. My goal, my dream right now for this scenario of what we have, still Ilja. If they do that one-on-one, I would love to see Ilja get that win.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Ilja for sure. That's a tough one, because it's really got to be like, who hasn't he competed against that could realistically be like, yeah, he's the one. I mean, look, it'd be real interesting if Julius Creed got that opportunity. That would be interesting. I would really like to see what Jade McDonagh would look like as NXT champion, like as a villain NXT champion. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, It's really interesting in WWE right now because when you look at the title holders, it's like, who's going to be the one to beat Roman? Who's going to be the one to beat Mandy? Who's going to be the one to beat Braun? Who's going to be the one to beat Bianca? It's like, I don't know. I don't know. But it's
We
a
have
fun conversation.
We have a suggestion here from Sheldon Jackson because he asked the same questions. Thoughts on who should finally dethrone Braun Breaker? I believe that it's time for Carmelo Hayes to truly become the A champion of NXT. Carmelo Hayes is another one where, he's been a two-time NXT North American champion. And I mean, the guy has a lot of skill, not just in-ring wise, but also just presentation. When he speaks, he's cool. He's fun to listen to. They got the whole, they have everything with him and Trick Williams, a nice little package, a nice little presentation there for Carmelo Hayes. And I do think that Carmelo Hayes could be that guy. I think right now that he's not champion, I would have liked it if he would have been champion for a good amount of time. And had he not lost the title to Solo Sikoa and he would have been champion leading up until tonight, I really do think Carmelo Hayes I would have been like, yes, he's, one of those guys to go up against Braun Breaker, but I don't think he's the guy just yet to defeat Braun Breaker.
I for some reason, I just feel like he'll be on the main roster before he beats Braun Breaker.
Ooh, okay. That's a really good prediction. I like that.
Yeah, I feel like Carmelo Hayes has to be on the main roster soon. Like, I feel like
good.
He's so good. He connects with the audience. Oh, when he told me he was stunting on these hoes I mean, so good.
Yes.
I feel like they've got to have a plan for him on the main roster, because he can't just show up but I feel like now is the time to start concocting a plan. And yeah, I mean, I'd have him on the main roster sooner than later.
I don't on SmackDown, even doing something with Santos Escobar. There's quite a couple of options there. There's quite a bit of what I think that they can do with Carmelo Hayes for sure. But thank you so much to Sheldon Jackson for that super chat. Alrighty, well, Sam, I want to thank you seriously so much. When I reached out to you to do this show, I thought he's going to say no or he can't or something. And when you said that you could and you said yes, I was like, woo! I had like a mini celebration. I was like, yes, this is happening. Make some graphics. Go. Graphics are done. Promote this show. Get it out there. I was so happy that you said yes. So I really just want to say thank you so much because I know that you've had a long day doing the pre-show and then being at the event and then rushing to go back to your hotel to make it on time for the show. You have no idea how much I appreciate you doing all of that. Seriously, thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you asking me. And, I mean, look, the fact that we get to talk about wrestling, like, it's like, I hope that I never get to the point where I'm like, oh, my day's been too long. I'm too tired to talk about wrestling. Like, I can't. I don't want to be that guy. And I still am very appreciative that you would value my input enough to delay your show and do everything. So I appreciate the invitation.
No, seriously. Thank you so much.
And hopefully next time we'll do something like this. I'll be at home so I can do it from my studio. So, I have everything's nice. This is not my usual thing.
No, I don't care. I'll take it. Trust me. I've done the hotel shows where I'm with my little microphone and I'm with my little headphones and I'm like, all right, guys, what's up? I'm here with this really random background, which by the way, yours is better than mine. Usually I've done mine with like the hotel bed in the back and I'm like trying to make it look like my sheets are actually nice and folded. So this is actually so much better than the things I've done at like the hotel setups. But Sam, before we go, please let the people know where they can support you, where they can listen to your podcast and all of that good stuff.
Well, yeah, as you can see on the screen there, Notsam on all social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everything. You can find me. Notsam Wrestling is the podcast. It's available every Monday over on Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get podcasts. Brian Gewirtz, former head writer of WWE, is going to be on the show on Monday. So that's a great interview. I think you'll really, really enjoy it. And all of our video from the podcast, including the interviews and, little hot takes from the show are up on the Notsam Wrestling YouTube channel. I have two YouTube channels. The Notsam channel is non-wrestling. It's, movie reviews and whatnot. And Notsam Wrestling is the wrestling YouTube. If you haven't seen it yet, I would recommend going over the Notsam Wrestling YouTube channel and checking out the MJF interview that I did.
Hell yeah. Or hell yeah. Check that out, man. I have the links to that in the description box below. So just go click away and find all of that stuff that Sam just mentioned. But other than that, guys, before we go, do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether you watch live or watch on the replay. Seriously, guys, thank you so much. Have a wonderful night. Until next time, I'm Denise Salcedo. This is Sam Roberts, and we'll see you guys later. Bye, everyone.